So I've got some PPC paddles here that I've gone out and tested in the flat water. I rode kind of a bigger fall around the 11 to 1200 square centimetre mark just to test these paddles and see what I like the best and what I'd recommend for someone looking at buying one. Also, a thing I really noticed with these new ones is the stiffer shaft. So not even taking into account the blade, just the shaft itself has created so much more power just because when you paddle, you just get that direct feedback straight out of the paddle. So yeah, that's something I really liked with this design. I've gone out and tested a 90 square inch, a 105 and a 115. Personally, I use a 105 blade. So the first one I took out was the 90 square inch. First feels was definitely less power for me, which isn't a bad thing, especially in the ocean. But what I noticed is it took me more strokes through the water to get up on foil. So for a smaller guy, I definitely recommend actually a smaller paddle, especially if your shoulders aren't as strong as you think. That's a big thing, is having the strength and not like hurting or straining your shoulders with a bigger paddle. The second paddle I use is the 105, which is the paddle I've been using the most in the last few months. So it felt really familiar. I definitely noticed, even with that extra surface area, it took me less paddles to get on foil. So when I was pulling through the water, I could feel the board lifting out earlier as well. So in the ocean, that can definitely equate to being on foil earlier or not missing the bump that you've paddled for, even if the timing's not perfect. So it's definitely something you want to take into account. So the last paddle I tried was the 115, and I was actually really surprised at how well this paddle pulled through the water. There was no slippage. It was direct feedback to what I was putting in, and obviously equated to less paddles or less strokes to get up on foil. So the 115 is probably the blade I'm going to start using more now. It's probably because over time, maybe I've gotten stronger through paddling more frequently, and yeah, it just didn't feel that much bigger than the 105 to me. So it's definitely something I'm probably going to be using a lot more in the ocean. A paddle is also an important part of the process, or a part of learning how to downwind, because if you don't have a too stiff of a paddle or not a good enough paddle, it's really gonna like hinder you when you're paddling up on foil. So you want a stiff paddle, something that's well designed, a pretty specific paddle for downwind foiling as well. That's what these PPCs are. Also, you don't want to have a paddle that is either too big or too small for your strength to strength to power ratio. So a 90 for me is a bit small. The 105, 115 is kind of the perfect kind of area for me for putting power in and getting that back out to get on foil.